Hi guys, welcome to Windsome Cottage Garden. My name is Hannah and I'm so glad that you decided to join me today. We are in the home garden, and as I teased in my last video, we're removing some trees in this video. Now, this is going to be a couple of different parts because we're actually doing them ourselves. I think I may have mentioned previously that we're going to be removing some of the hemlocks in the back of my garden to create some additional sunlight for the vegetable garden as well as other areas. It is very blustery today, so I apologize if the audio is bad, but hopefully I'll be able to take some of it out in editing. It's almost always blustery where I am, so if I waited till there was no wind, I wouldn't be doing anything. Anyway, we have actually already started this project, so I'm going to insert what I was able to capture. I haven't really been able to do the whole thing because my dad's been doing it. I've been at work, he's been doing some of it then, but if I was able to capture video, I did. So why don't I show you what we've already taken out in the video, and then I'll hop in and show you what it's looking like right now. It is a little bit messy because we still have all the different debris to pick up, but as you can see, one tree is gone in its entirety and this one has been started, as is the ugly yew bushes and arborvitae that really close this whole space up. And it has actually, let me just hop up here and show you what it's done to the view. So I'm standing with my back to the door. You might hear some soccer in the background. And originally, as you guys know, we had a giant wall of arborvitae immediately to my left. Now, walk out the door, all you get to see is this glorious expansive yard. And actually you get to see into my neighbor's yard a little bit more, which has a beautiful borrowed view. This has also opened up light for these windows here that were basically shrouded. And as you can see, these arborvitae were quite tall. My guess is they were probably 20 feet tall at least. And they'd also taken on some damage this winter with heavy ice and snow loads that they were splitting because they had multiple runners. So removing these has always been on my list to do, especially because as I develop this space, I want to be able to see it all, and this has really opened it up. I think it's also allowed me to kind of decide, okay, as I invest in trees, where are they going to go? If we kind of pan over here, you'll also get a bird's eye view of what we have accomplished. Now, this is still being broken up. I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do right now, as the place that we go to dump this stuff is closed for the rest of the weekend. So I think it's going to be more tidying up and just waiting till my dad comes back in a couple of weeks to get this done. But you can see that this whole clump opened up a whole lot of sunshine here. And then we did get one big trunk out of this, which has even opened up things further. Looking at it originally, my goal was to try and save this hemlock, which it does have a bit of dead in it, which is a bit of a bummer. However, with where the sun is in the sky, which is pretty high now, I think that this won't affect the vegetable garden, which is going to be going in over here. We are going to be laying that out in the next couple weeks, and I'm basically going to take the opportunity to, take the next week or two to really watch how the sun moves now that it's even higher in the sky than it was this winter. Identify whether taking this tree out will add additional light or if it's just going to be same old, same old. If it's same old, I'd really like to keep it because it does provide a nice evergreen barrier between me and the neighbors behind me. That being said, I had wanted to keep this clump in the corner as an anchor, but now that we've gotten this out, I can see how sad this tree is looking. I'm going to live with it for a while. But it is something that I'm going to evaluate whether it's worth keeping, or since it is really janky looking, to be honest, if I took it out, the tree on my neighbor's side would probably fill in a little bit more over here because it's been shaded all this time, which might be nice because it's a pretty maple, and then that could fill in some of the privacy as well. I do plan to bring in more trees here. I'm thinking probably 2 will replace these, and then sticking a 3rd in here, as well as maybe a couple in the perimeters. They're going to be quite small for some time because it'll probably take a decade or 2 for them to put on some size. So, trying to see if this is going to help get out of the wind any bit more. I'm not sure if it does, but in theory, I'm a tiny bit protected. As I said, I'm going to get those trees. My goal is to get them in this year. I did chat a little bit with the neighbor behind me, and they're planning on replacing that fence at some point this summer. And they're also going to be doing some leveling work. So with that in mind, I might not plant them as immediately as I planned to originally, but I will at least, the very least, get them done this fall. So that also gives us a little bit more time to get these trees down. We were hoping to get the 2 I knew were definitely going out done this trip in its entirety, but as you might be able to tell with this gusty wind, it is not the weather to be felling trees in. So we did prioritize getting the arborvitae and yew out, which I had been thinking would be later this year. It looks a little sad right now with them gone because it's exposed kind of how ugly the deck is, but it's also meant that I can move some timelines forward with developing the beds around the deck. So as we kind of pan across, you're just going to see, frankly, how ugly this looks. Now, this deck is going to need to be, at the very least, redecked. I'm a little concerned that it might need new structural supports, but that is a project for at least next year, maybe the year after. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is work on getting these stumps out. I'll just let the grass kind of take over. But my long-term plan is to actually put a retaining wall in, just a short one, kind of curve it around here where there will be a path leading into the grass area, and then bring this up a little bit so it's not quite so steep a drop-off. We're also going to change where the entrance to the deck is. Right now, if you look at it, you can see there's a, frankly, stupidly skinny path very close to the house. Again, long term, maybe hopefully this year, what I'd like to do is continue the path off this. We'll break this little pad up and continue this line off all the way to here until it'll curve into the path going into the grass area. We'll also take this step and move it over so you're stepping down here, and that'll, come out here. It'll meet the vegetable garden, which I'm technically standing in right now, and that'll allow us to move the patio furniture from where it was right here, so you still had this walkway, to over here. So when you come out the door, you step, you come out, and you step, which will allow you to view the yard versus the house. It really just makes a lot more sense to me, in all honesty. That'll also add some additional bed space, including a couple of areas that I already have some plants identified with how I want to fill them. Now, my goal is to get as much of what I just talked about done this year as possible. I do know that the 2 trees we've already identified are definitely going to be coming down this year. That will actually be done in the next month, is my guess. We have a penciled in appointment on the calendar for when Dad's going to come back and do that felling, and hopefully my brothers who Sean was with us and helped with this. I'm hoping Sean and Ian can both come and help with that project as well. And then at that point, I'll probably have figured out if I want to keep that anchor tree or not. I'm honestly leaning towards not. And I'll go in just a moment and show you, if you're up under it, how odd it looks, to be frank, from the side that I see, which is how I view everything. So I'd much rather see a pretty side. That's just a couple of things that I know are going to get done. That retaining wall is probably not going to get done. Unless I can finagle something, because the limited funds I have, I'm going to be putting into those anchor plants so that I can get those in the ground this year so they can start going and get the clock going. I'm not actually doing this in what would be the correct order, and I'm going to fully own that right now. When you're planning on a new space, an ideal order would be to do hardscape first. So that retaining wall, that path that I talked about, in theory, those should go first. Then your larger anchor plants, whether they're the trees I spoke of or evergreens or larger shrubs, those go in. Then the perennials get filled in and the bulbs after that. Also, when you're doing the hardscape, you probably want to address things like irrigation. With my budget, I can't do it in that order because I'd probably be waiting for a really long time until I could afford to do a huge project like the irrigation. This year, the irrigation that's here is sufficient for right now. What I'm going to be doing in the fall is meeting with the guy who does it and kind of walking through, here's my ultimate plan for the next 10 years. Here's some of the hardscape I'm going to be doing in the near future. How can we piecemeal this project to make the irrigation work a little bit better for me? I recognize that doing it all at once would be more cost effective, but if I had to bundle it, how should I bundle it? They're the experts. I'm hoping they can help me figure that out a bit. At my old house, I did all my own irrigation because it was all just, drip irrigation off of faucets. There is in-ground irrigation here and limited faucets. So I'd like to try and figure out a happy medium using what's already in place, but also recognizing at some point I'm probably going to need to do some larger logistical work, which again should be done before I get too far down, but I can get started without having to address that. So my priorities are those plants, as I mentioned, so I could get the clock started, and then it'll probably be things like that retaining wall. Now my dad has built a number of them, so I think that's something between the two of us we could do. It's just then becoming maybe an end of the year sale. I get lucky and find the stone I need, and we go from there. After that's done, I can really fill in that area and enjoy, which is really the goal, is to get that done. The path, I know where it's going to go. If it's mulch for a number of years, that's okay. That can be added at any point in time, though. Eventually, I'd like it to be crushed stone. But like I said, I'm thinking that this garden that I have in my mind is going to take a decade to build, whether it's plants getting some size and maturity, or just, picking off these budget items and deciding what is my priority throughout the years. This year, the new plants I'm going to be doing are those anchor plants. I'm also going to be putting a vegetable garden in that is maybe not be the finished product, but it'll be close to what I think I want. And I'll live for it a couple of years before we lock it in. And that'll still allow me to use the space and continue plucking away at those small bits here and there. And then I'm going to just focus on a couple of beds and developing them over time. And then they'll gradually spread until the more grandiose plan I have. That's my plan anyway. I think it's probably the most sense for me. And I can see where things are going, so I can also plan to leave space for some of those anchor items, especially as I, just continue to be able to afford them. Because I want to get the larger size, good quality ones. And those just take time. Building a garden in general just takes time. Let me kind of show you up close what this tree in the corner looks like, as I just kind of sit and live with it for a while and decide if I want it. Kind of just come up. You can see that the hemlock that was here totally grew into this and really affected how this looks, to a point that I don't know if it's worth saving. That's something I'm just going to have to weigh. I should point out that all of my oak leaf hydrangeas did survive. I was very concerned about them. Really slow to leaf out, but they're all leafing out. This one is the saddest looking, though it is, I think now that it's going to be getting more sun, should be good. There's one over here, and there's one that's currently very close to a trunk, but survived for the most part. which is good. I may end up shifting where they are a little bit as the space evolves, and I want to move them as quickly as possible so they can continue settling. Oh, I should also add about the deck. It's a high priority to get the railing fixed, so that this drop, which I'm shocked that there was no railing, is immediately addressed. So my dad and brother are going to do some more tidying up that I will film. And then I'll just kind of show you a wrapped up space with where it is for now before we come back in a couple weeks and tackle the remainder of these trees. Okay, so my dad and Sean get everything tidied up, and I thought I'd just give you a quick look because it honestly hasn't changed that much except for the fact that there's no longer trees in the middle of the yard. They're going to be coming back in about a week and a half to hopefully take care of the rest of the trees, and I'm hoping it's something that can get done all in a weekend. We're really hampered by the fact that we're basically hauling this all away ourselves. And the place that we go to dispose of the garden debris in our trailer is only open till 5 p.m. on weekdays and noon on Saturdays. So if we miss that window, my dad isn't staying till Monday, which most of the time they're not. Unfortunately, we're kind of out of luck. And so we have to get everything done in such a manner that we can leave my house about 10 a.m. on Saturday, just to make sure we have time to get it there and get it emptied before they close. So that is actually one of the biggest challenges of all this, as is the weather. I think I mentioned, I just wanted to briefly reiterate something I did say earlier in this video. My dad has experience felling trees a little bit. It's been a while since he's done it, and these are probably the upper limit of what he'd be comfortable doing himself versus hiring a professional. You can't really see it, but he has this method of which is pretty common, where he basically takes a chunk out to provide a hinge that kind of helps direct the tree exactly where he wants it to fall. And a lot of times he'll also attach a rope that someone is helping pull, not to pull it down, just to make sure that the angle stays true. So my dad has experience with this. The other thing that I wanted to reiterate is on one of the days you saw us doing the cleanup, it was very, very windy and the audio was terrible. We did not fell any trees that day. That's why there were actually 2 on the ground. We made it a priority because we saw the wind was coming in to get those down. Normally my dad would get one down, clean it, and then get the next down. He wanted them both down before the wind came because wind is not something that we want to mess with when you're doing trees like that. So just reiterating, my dad had experience. We were careful about this. These also are trees that weren't big enough to touch my house. One of them maybe could have reached the deck. So my dad had us clear everything off, but he wasn't trying to push it that way. So it all worked out really, really well. But just reiterating that this is helping me save a lot of money, that we didn't have to hire somebody to do this. I didn't get it quoted because I knew my dad could do it, but I suspect, because I've had some stuff removed before, that this project would have cost $3,000 with all the trees, maybe more if I added some. like I'm contemplating doing. So I'm really grateful that my dad and brother were able to help, because right now we're only paying for the disposal of stuff, which is $20 a trailer load. So I'm probably like 80 bucks into this now, which isn't bad at all. I think at the end of this project, it'd probably be about 200, 300, but compared to a couple thousand, that's really, really good. And the cost of some beer and pizza, not bad, I say. So let me just show you the cleaned up area and where we're leaving this. I'm also, again, going to kind of try not to show you a part of my yard where another project is already underway, because it's a really big project. I have been working other things, helping my dad as needed, but then going to different areas and working on projects. So I'm going to try and not have you see something that's going to be coming in an upcoming video. So it might be, if you're like, why isn't she panning over to the side? It's because I'm trying to like keep that video separate. So let me go show you what it looks like all neat and tidy. Here it is. As I mentioned, we did get this all done. I didn't get most of that on camera because my dad did it while I was working. This one I did manage to get, and this trunk right here was quite large. The biggest thing that was hard with these trees is a couple of them got caught up in branches. So then the rope was really helpful to be able to just kind of tug them out. And I know my dad had help from a neighbor at one point when I was still at work. So this tree, I'm still thinking about it. I am leaning towards taking it out and getting like maybe a weeping Alaskan cedar or something that's evergreen that can be an anchor right there, but also doesn't get super tall. That's what I'm leaning at right now, but that looks okay. It's just taking this down now would be a lot better than when I have a lot more stuff in this area. I'm also leaning on keeping this tree because even though it's got some dead in it that we could probably get up on a ladder and cut out, it'll now start getting a lot more sun, so hopefully it'll fill out a little bit more, and it just provides such a pretty green wall between me and the neighbors. But this is the current state of things. So that is the trees coming down process. It has honestly like opened up the whole yard in a way that I am absolutely loving, and it just makes me so excited to kind of dive in and keep going. Probably more excited than my budget allows for. The good news is one of the next projects we have is a vegetable garden, and that'll give me something to focus on, as well as I've picked 2 beds that are going to be my focus this year using the plants I brought with me, and just transforming them to be a little bit more to my tastes and vision of what this yard will eventually be like. I really appreciate you joining me. I know this wasn't like super garden focused, but it's really big about getting some of these big trees down and opening up the yard. We're going to get planting those new trees soon. Might be this fall based on some activities of my neighbors, and just what makes sense in terms of being a good neighbor and making sure that if they need to smooth some stuff out a little bit on my property, it's available to them to make their job easier. Our backyard undulates quite a lot. I learned from one of my neighbors who was here when these homes were built that the builders took the trees they felled to build the homes and just kind of piled them up between the yards to form a berm, and then put fill dirt over them, which might have seemed like a good idea at the time. However, now 20, 30 years later, those trees are decomposing and things are settling at odd rates. It was not a great idea in the long run. I don't really know why they did that, but the neighbor behind me, since he's going to be tearing down his fence and rebuilding it, and it really does kind of go up and down, he wants to kind of smooth it out. So instead of too much up and down, it's a little bit more steady. And I don't have anything planted back there, so if it's easier for them to get the right angles and stuff by coming slightly onto my property, I don't really care. And I also don't see that fence because of the way the trees are and some of the stuff I'm planting. I'm never going to see it. So while the undulation doesn't bother me, I'm happy to make their job easier. But that also means I need to wait to plant the trees because that would not make their job easier. So all that to say, the transformation started. I'm really excited to dive into these spaces and some of our other larger projects that are coming soon, and you won't want to miss them. So please subscribe and come back to this channel. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button. It helps me reach a wider audience, and just share this journey with others. So leaving a comment below would also be great. Especially let me know what kind of trees you think that I should put in here. I have a couple ideas. I am a zone 6, and I'm hoping to get trees that only get 20 to 25 feet tall. Shorter is also okay. 15 feet's probably, at maturity, is probably the shortest I'd want to go. And I have a couple different ideas. I'm prioritizing flowering shrubs, and I'm really excited. I don't really want things like arborvitae, even though that would provide that nice hedge. I'm focused more on deciduous trees with some additional spring and fall interest as well. So comment below what you think I should consider when picking out trees. I really appreciate you joining me in this video, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye-bye.